Have you ever looked back over life and wondered, who would I have been if the abuse had never happened? Not every day, not every year, but perhaps there's been moments you see another woman your age laughing and having confidence, and you hear someone talk about their happy childhood, and you watch a grandmother playing freely with their grandchildren, and something inside of you quietly asks, would I have been different? Would I have worried less? Would I have trusted more? Would I have enjoyed life more? Would I have felt safer? Would I have become someone else? If you've ever had that thought, I want you to know something today. You're not being selfish and you're not lacking faith. You're not going backwards in your healing. You may be experiencing grief that survivors of childhood sexual abuse never realize they're carrying. Do you know the Bible actually is filled with people who grieved what was lost? In Psalms 34:18, we're told, the Lord is near to those with a broken heart and saves such as have a contrite spirit. God does not move away from grief. He actually moves towards it, not just grief over what happened, but grief over the life you believe you should have had. And today we want to talk about grief because many women carry it silently for decades. And because I believe God wants to meet us here too. Hello, I'm Annette. I'm a pastor, a wife, and a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And here at Awake to Joy, we have honest conversations about surviving childhood trauma, healing later in life, and discovering that joy is possible no matter how many years we've carried the pain. And today we're going to talk about something that I don't think gets discussed nearly enough: the grief of the life you didn't live. Because many survivors don't just grieve abuse, they grieve the ripple effects, the years of opportunities, the relationships it's affected, the people they wonder if they might have been. When we were young, we usually just tried to survive. We'd survive the abuse. We'd survive keeping secrets. We survived the confusion. We survived the shame. And we survived adulthood. We raised children. We go to work. We care for spouses. We care for parents. We keep going. And many survivors become experts at functioning. But somewhere later in life, many women begin to realize something. They're not only grieving what happened, but they're grieving what never happened. In the book of Psalms, David repeatedly brought his losses, his disappointments, his questions directly to God. He didn't pretend everything was fine. In Psalms 13, he begins with, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me? Forever?" Maybe you've wondered if I would have felt safer in relationships. Maybe you wonder if you would have trusted people more. Maybe you wondered if you would have pursued a different career. I wonder if I would have enjoyed motherhood differently. I wondered if I would have felt comfortable in my own body. I wonder if I would have laughed more often. I wonder if I would have lived with less fear. Those are not strange questions. Those are grieving questions. Because childhood abuse doesn't simply hurt us in the moment. It affects how we see ourselves, how we trust, how we love, how we receive love, and how we believe God sees us. And sometimes, decades later, begin grieving not only what happens to us, but the life trajectory that grew out of what happened to us. I think one of the reasons many women don't experience this grief fully until later in life, because they were just too busy surviving. In our 20s, we're building. In our 30s, we're raising families. In our 40s, we're working and caring for everyone else. And in our 50s, many of us are still trying to hold everything together. And then something changes. Life becomes quieter, the children grow up, retirement approaches, and our bodies are changing, our responsibilities are shifting. And suddenly, well, there's room to remember room to feel. And sometimes life becomes quieter and grief becomes louder. Ecclesiastes reminds us to everything there's a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. Perhaps for some of us, later in life becomes the season where God finally gives us permission to safely grieve what we've carried for decades. You may find yourself crying over things that you haven't thought about for 40 years. You may suddenly feel angry or sad or disappointed. Perhaps you don't even understand why. But maybe, dear friend, you're finally allowing yourself to grieve. Not because you're getting weaker, no, but because you finally become safe enough to feel what you've carried all along. This is where things become very painful, because many survivors carry an image in their minds of a woman who never experienced abuse, a woman who is confident, secure, joyful, fearless, a woman who trusts easily, loves freely, lives boldly. And we like to compare ourselves to her. We look at our lives and then we look at the imaginary life we think we should have had. And that gap between those can feel heartbreaking. I understand that. I truly do. But there is something important I've learned. I don't actually know who that woman would have been. She would have had struggles too. She would have had experienced losses too. She would have faced disappointments of different sorts. And the problem isn't that our grief isn't real. The problem is when we begin to live in comparison to a person we've never actually existed. And then comparison can become its own prison, because we could spend the rest of our lives mourning the version of ourselves that we can never prove was possible. The Apostle Paul, he warned us against this. He warned against measuring ourselves by ourselves. In 2 Corinthians 10:12, he writes that comparing ourselves among ourselves is not wise. I have perhaps one of the most painful comparisons survivors make, comparing our real life to an imaginary version of ourselves that never experienced trauma. There was a moment several years ago that I remember clearly. I was working with a business coach who knew about my history of childhood abuse. And one day, in the middle of the conversation about leadership, he asked me a question that I'd never really considered before. He said, I wonder what kind of leader you would have been today if you had not experienced so much abuse as a child. To be honest, that question, it hit me hard. Not because he meant to hurt me. I don't believe he did. But for the first time in my life, I began wondering, who would I have been? Would I have been more confident? Would I have trusted people more? Would I have less controlling issues? Would I have led differently? And if I'm honest, for a season, that question discouraged me, because underneath it, I heard something that I don't think he intended to say, but I heard, you were damaged. And I began grieving a version of myself that I imagined I should have been. But over time, I believe God gently began showing me something different. Yes, childhood abuse affected me. And there were ways I responded to life that were shaped by fear and by trying to stay safe. There are behaviors like trying to control too much that I had to bring to God and continue to work through with Him. But God also began showing me that my life was never an accident, that He still had a good plan for me, and that some of the very things I wished I didn't have to carry had also given me something I could never have gained any other way. A deep compassion for people who have suffered, an understanding of trauma and PTSD, a heart that recognizes pain in others. And honestly, if my life had been different, I might not be sitting here today having this conversation with you. I might not have created this channel. I might not have had the privilege of encouraging survivors and pointing them toward the healing they have found in Jesus Christ. So today, when I think about the question, who would I have been? I no longer think of it as grieving a better version of myself. Instead, I think of it in this way. God knew exactly who I would become. Not because the abuse was good. No, it wasn't. But because God has a plan for my life, and it's always been way bigger than the evil that has been done to me. Sometimes Christians accidentally make grieving harder. We hear things like, just be thankful God worked everything out. Don't dwell on the past. You're supposed to have joy. The Bible's filled with grief. The Psalms are filled with grief. God's people lamented. They cried. They mourned. They asked questions. And they acknowledged their loss. And I think many survivors need permission to say, I lost something. I lost safety. I lost my innocence. I lost trust. I lost years. I lost opportunities. I lost experiences, and I lost parts of myself. And saying that doesn't mean you lack faith. It means you're telling the darn truth. And God has never been afraid of the truth. And the Bible gives us an entire book called Lamentations. Think about that for a moment. God preserved an entire book of scripture devoted to grief. In Lamentations 3:19-20, it talks about remember my affliction and roaming and the wormwood and the gall. My soul still remembers and sinks within me. Jeremiah wrote, remember my affliction and roaming, the wormwood and the gall. My soul still remembers the sinks within me. In other words, Jeremiah was saying, Lord, I still remember the bitterness of what I've been through. And perhaps some of us, after 60 years, are finally admitting my soul still remembers it too. God did not silence the grief. He included it in his word. And the fact, healing often begins when we finally stop pretending. There's a verse that many survivors know. I will restore you the years the locusts have eaten. And for years, I just misunderstood that verse. I thought the restoration meant getting back exactly what I lost. But that's not what restoration is. That's not what it looks like. God doesn't give us childhood back. He doesn't give us our 20s back, and he does not erase the pain. He does something beautiful. He redeems. He restores identity. He restores purpose. He restores peace. He restores joy. He restores intimacy with him. And he restores our ability to love. He restores the ability to be present. And perhaps one of the greatest acts of courage a survivor can do is to stop pretending that she's lost nothing. To simply say, Lord, I did lose something. I lost a lot, and I'm grieving. Because when we finally tell the truth about what was lost, we create space for God to show us what we can still be restored. Dear friend, if you've looked over your life and wondered who you might have been if the abuse never happened, I want you to know something. You're not crazy. You're not ungrateful, and you're not failing in your faith. You're grieving. Grief is not a sign that God has abandoned you. Sometimes grief is a place where God finally meets us with the tenderness we've been needing all along. You may never know exactly who you would have been, but I believe this: God still knows who you are, not who the abuse said you were, not who the shame said you were, not who the fear said you were, who he says you are. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God. This verse does not say all things are good. Childhood abuse was never good. The years we lost were never good. But God is so powerful and so loving that he can bring redemption even from what was meant to be destroying us. And next week, we're going to talk about a question many survivors ask. Can God restore the years trauma stole from us? Because the answer may not be what you've been told, but I believe it's far more hopeful than you imagine. Many survivors never put these feelings into words. And if someone came to mind while watching this video, perhaps God brought them to mind for a reason. Please consider sharing this video with them. And remember, because he lives, it does change everything.